jnet.tv. It is 9 p.m. On the East Coast, we are looking forward to an action-packed and wonderful spiritual journey this week, starting tonight, starting right now. We are recording, we are streaming live, we have a chat room waiting, and we will switch to Studio 8 in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Well, good evening. Welcome to pjnet.tv. We are streaming live, and we are starting a brand new week, and we're starting it off right. If you have been on Facebook or any social media platform for that matter, if you have not heard of the recently released book, Love Knots, you're not doing something right. But anyway, the author, or one of the driving forces behind it, is Karen Jurgens. Now, she has a book of her own recently published, I think, called A Perfect Fit, which you will see adorned on our platform here. But we have not only a picture of her book published, we've actually got her right here live on PJNet. Karen, how you doing tonight?
Hi, I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for having me back. I love to be on your program anytime.
Well, we love to have excitement. We love to have inspiration. And it looks like Love Knots has tied all of that together. And we could spend an hour talking about this. But tell us from the authority, tell us about your new venture.
Well, we are so excited. There are 13 of us, and we have gone on this adventure together, and we have just published our new book, our new devotional called Love Knots. And you can see on the screen the picture of the actual love knot. And I'm going to tell you a little bit first about why we named it Love Knots and what the love knot actually means. And this is all tied in with the Song of Solomon, or the Song of Songs in the Old Testament. And this actually is a picture of what is a crochet stitch. And it's called a love knot. And this comes right out of the Song of Songs. So the name of the bridegroom, which is beloved Solomon, comes from two Hebraic words which mean love and peace. So as the love and peace envelop and grow in the Song of Songs, the bride is trying to find the bridegroom, and she's searching for him. And when she finds him, then she abides in his presence, and she abides in his perfect love and his perfect peace. So I want to do a little show and tell before I get into more of that, and show what Lev Haloam sent me last month. And if you're not familiar with Lev Haloam, that is a company out of Israel who has a lot of artisans and entrepreneurs and little farmers, and they have gotten together in a company where they ship a whole box of all kinds of goodies to the people in other countries. And it's really amazing because our book is based on the Song of Solomon, and Lev Haloam sent out a Song of Songs package with all kinds of food and all kinds of treats, and I wanted to show you some of those. First, they sent a book, Song of Songs, and inside, it's so interesting because it's got all kinds of artwork, and it has not only the entire book of the Song of Songs from the Bible. On one side, it's in English, and then on the other side, it's in Hebrew. And it's just a beautiful little book. So this is very, very special. And then they also sent a little package, but it kind of looks like potpourri. It's actually some organic herbs, and this has been grown in the hills of Ephraim in Israel. So this is fresh out of Israel, and it smells really good. It smells like the woods, and that symbolism is in the Song of Songs. And this is the most special thing that I just love that I have to show. This is a verse from the Song of Songs, and it is, make haste, my beloved, and be thou to me a gazelle. And if I can pull this, I'll show you the gazelle running across the field. I hope you can see
Oh
that.
yeah,
You
it
see it
animates
now.
as you slide it. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. And so they sent that, the symbolism. So it's so interesting that in Israel, not only are the Jews celebrating the Song of Songs and the symbolism, but that of course applies to us as well. So, getting back to the symbolism of love knots again, in the Old Testament, God had the love knots carved, the actual symbols carved in the base of the temple, and in the base of the pillars in the temple, and they were overlaid with gold, and they were also on the lavers where the priests washed their hands. But in the New Testament, which is where we are, Jesus is our bridegroom, and he carves the love knot in our hearts. In our hearts, when we worship Him, that's when the Lord comes in and He ties us and stitches us together with His love. So we abide in His peace and we abide in His love. So that's the symbolism for us today. So that's the reason we chose Love Knots. And I want to go over some stories and just tell you about some highlights. So we have three sections. We have faith and family and friendships. So I'm going to start with the story about the dentist. And my story that I'm sharing is called Blessings in Disguise. And what happened years ago, I bit into a granola bar that was made out of raw food. And at that time, I just thought that was really cool to get that kind of thing. And so the bar was, I guess, kind of stale, and my front tooth bent backwards, and I had to go to the dentist and get it fixed. And when the endodontist got in there to look at it, he found that I had hidden infection deep down inside the tooth that nobody ever would have seen. So this was actually a blessing in disguise. And I was able to get my tooth fixed and get rid of all that infection. So this story is based on Psalm 139, verses 23 and 24, which says, Search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me and know my anxieties, and see if there is any wicked way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. So here, under the category of faith, one thing that we try to formulate in our love knot is growth and sanctification. Because as the Lord cleans our hearts and we confess our sins, even those sins that are undetected, we grow in sanctification in Jesus. And another story, this is in the family section. This is about my little poodle, Bobo. And years ago, our family moved to Arizona. And in the desert, people develop allergies. But the poor little thing, he developed an allergy to the desert, and he turned out to have asthma, and he couldn't breathe. And at that time, I don't think they had any treatment for animals as far as asthma. So the vet eventually just sent the dog home to die because there was nothing else that they could do. So I was praying for the dog. We were all praying for him to get well, but I had never heard of God healing a pet before, just people. So the interesting thing about this story is I had a very supernatural experience where the night that Bobo was supposedly going to die, he was just really, just almost out of breath. He couldn't even breathe. And when I went to bed that night, I cried myself almost to sleep, and I prayed and just put him in the Lord's hands because there was nothing anybody could do. And right when I was going to sleep, all of a sudden, the voice of God totally consumed me on the inside. And a voice said, The dog will be all right. And I woke up. I didn't know what had happened, but I knew in my family I'd heard people talk about hearing the voice of God. And I thought, was this God's voice? So it was just amazing what had happened. So the next day, I thought, well, if the dog lives, then I guess that was God's voice. And sure enough, when I got up, the dog was just about totally well. He was running around, he was eating, he was happy, and he lived 10 more years after that. So it was really an amazing touch of God that the dog, just on the threshold of death, was healed, and he continued living. So I think this is an encouragement to people that if you have a pet that you love very much and is sick, God cares about our pets just as much as he cares about people. And I learned that lesson firsthand. So that was a wonderful lesson for me to learn. And another story is also in the family section, and this is about my godly heritage. And I share this. This is a really special story. My great grandparents lived in eastern Kentucky, and I would spend time going to visit them when I was a child. And we have a history of ministers in that family, a long line of ministers. And my great grandfather was very instrumental in being such a godly example to our family. And it made a real impression on me as a child. So this story is based on Proverbs 22:6, which says, "Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it." And I think even as children grow, and especially during those teen or early years in their 20s when they may go astray, God will always bring those children back to himself because of that early training. So I feel that I'm walking down the corridors of prayer that have been laid by generations of my godly family, and I appreciate that so much because my grandfather would have all the family get down on their knees at night before bed, and everybody would pray out loud, and everybody took a turn. And that just made such a big impression on me to watch them pray. And he read the Bible and he would explain it to the family. He was just a wonderful, godly man. And what I'm trying to encourage through this story is that even if you don't come from a godly family and you don't have that heritage, you can start that tradition with your generation now. And the encouragement here is to pray a foundation of prayer for all of the future generations in your line, your children, your grandchildren, if the Lord would tarry, to pray as far out as your generations are going to go. So it's made a huge difference in my life, and when I've had difficulties and trials, I just feel like there's always been that force behind my prayers that have been there as my foundation through my godly heritage. And then there's another story in the friendship section, and this one is about fishing. This one is called "Don't Bite the Bait," and I don't like to fish, but I think I've been once or twice in my life. I know this story is about one time. I think the first time I ever went. It's based on Proverbs 25:11, which is a word fitly spoken is like apples of gold in settings of silver. And this is a story about baiting a hook. And of course, I don't like to fish, and I don't like smelly bait. And trying to put a slimy piece of something on a hook is just not my thing. And, I just don't like the whole thing of fishing or the smells. It's just, ugh, disgusting. But um, I couldn't believe that I actually got a bite on my hook when I went fishing for the first time. And I reeled it in, and the poor little fish was flopping in the bottom of the rowboat. And at first I was so excited that I caught something. And then when I looked at that poor fish, his eyes were terrified, and he was flopping around and trying to get loose. And bless you, and hit the hook was like through his jaw, just like a catch on a string of pearls, and he literally could not get loose. So if you're a fisherman, you understand what that looks like. And I begged my friend to undo the fish and throw it back in the water because I was just crying. I got to the point where I was so upset. I didn't believe that I was making that poor little fish suffer like that. And he swam off, and I know he was just terribly grateful. I could just tell he was. He was thrilled to be free. And I hope that he would learn not to bite the bait the next time when he saw bait floating in the water. So this is really a good lesson that applies to all of our lives, not only with words, but with all situations, because Satan will take a little piece
Hmm.
of glittering, juicy bait, some kind of morsel that he knows that we're going to bite at because it's our weak spot. He knows our weak spots, and he'll bait the hook, and we just have to keep swimming by and not bite the bait, because if we do, Satan can put that hook right in our jaw and pull us into his boat, and we can flop around and can't get out. But the good news is that Jesus can unhook us and throw us back in the water and free us from Satan's grasp. So I think this is a really good story that exemplifies that really well. That God will free us, Jesus will free us from that hook of sin. So we have to be very careful, because there's all kinds of glittering bait in the world tempting us on all sides, as we know. And then the last story, this is Diane Virginia's story. This is Dancing Shoes. So I want to share that one. And that's the picture. I think she drew that, actually. She's an artist too. And this is a story, and it's based on Mark 10:14. Let the children come to me, do not hinder them, for to such belongs the kingdom of God. And this is a real sweet story about her daughter Danielle when she was 4.5. And Danielle was taking dancing lessons, and she had a pair of beautiful dancing shoes. And she loved Jesus, and she loved to dance for Jesus. And she said, the little girl was so sweet. She says, Mommy, when I put on my dancing shoes, I feel Jesus in my heart, and I want to dance for him because I love him so much. And one day in church, people were praising and worshiping, and Daniel wanted to run down the aisles in her and dance. I don't think she was in her dancing shoes, but she wanted to run up and down the aisles and praise Jesus. And so her mother let her do that. And everybody was so touched by that, because you know what it says in the Word: a little child will lead them. And her delight that she showed everyone, her delight and her joy and her love for the Lord, was just so outstanding. And I think everybody was very touched. So this story shows us that we should not hinder children, but we should encourage them to come to the Lord and to express themselves and to express their love for the Lord. And in this case, it was through dancing. And another point about this story is that maybe we can't dance down the aisles of the church, but our inner hearts will put on dancing shoes, and we can dance before the Lord inside when we're praising and worshiping. So this was a story about the delight of childlike faith, innocence, and worship in reckless abandon. So those are some stories. There are so many more that have been written by other authors in our group, and the book is just so wonderful. And I hope that people will go out and buy it. And I just want to conclude about the book with one other point here, because we do have a prayer that Diane wrote. And our prayer for the reader is that these stories will stitch a love knot of God's peace and love in everyone's heart. And especially, they will have a beautiful love knot stitched inside, relating to their faith, their family, and their friendships. And that is our prayer, that people will be drawn closer to Jesus and have a closer walk, and that love knot will be just tied just beautifully inside of each person's heart, and that these stories will help people to grow in the Lord. So that is really our mission with our new devotional.
Karen, we don't have time to mention the 13 contributing authors, but are there 13 stories in this book?
No, there actually are 40. And the reason that there are 40 is because 40 is the number of change.
Hmm.
And that's why we wanted to use that many. So several of us have at least 3 stories, and some people have more than that. But each author has about 3, a little bit more.
Okay. And each individual story, about how long of a read is that?
Well, they're all about the same length. They're just maybe a couple of pages. Some are a little
Okay.
shorter, some are a little longer, but
Yeah.
the whole book is about, I think it's close to 150 pages,
Okay.
maybe a little bit under that, but that's
So
that's that's
in the comfort zone for a devotional.
yeah, yeah.
You'll sit down with a
So
cup of coffee and
yeah,
start your
so
day
yeah.
right. Um,
So 40 days, you read one every day for 40 days, and yeah, probably would take maybe 5 minutes
mhm.
to read it, something like that.
So there's
So
a lot of, we've been fortunate here at pjnet.tv to intersect with so many wonderful Christian authors, and you probably know more than we do. How do you decide which 13 to go with?
well, that is through prayer. And Diane, of course, is the person behind all of this, and she has chosen every person based in prayer and how the Lord has led her. So it is very interesting. We have a very diverse group of people from all types of backgrounds and all walks of life. There are a lot of ministers, people who have, their ministry credentials, and we have authors, and then we have people who are just devotion writers too. So we're kind of all over the board as far as what people come to the table with. And but the thing that we all have in common is that we love Jesus, and we want to promote Jesus, and we want people to have a closer walk with the Lord, and we just want to be examples and let the Lord use us any way that He desires. So this is our first book. We have plans for one or two more to come out next year, and those are really very exciting too. And we're going to follow this same pattern with the devotionals, and it'll still be called Love Knots, but it's going to be take a different
Hmm.
twist.
Hmm.
This one is the family, friends, and friendships. And we're going to do another one. I'm real excited about a Christmas one, and it's going to be stories of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Doesn't
Oh,
that sound cool? I'm excited about that one. So we do have a lot of things in the works, and we're getting started now on our next project that hopefully will come out next year. And it's just real exciting to see how the Lord leads. We pray, we read the Word. Our group is based on Scripture together about peace, and it's interesting because that's really one thing we want to walk in is God's perfect peace, especially in these kinds of times. That these unusual times that we're in, His peace is so comforting and so wonderful, and we want to pass that on, especially during these difficult times when people are seeking peace.
Karen, I know that there is so much excitement being generated by this new work, and it shows, and we can hear it, we can see it, and you can see it all over. And we appreciate you sharing with us some of the stories behind the stories, and we look forward to having more of the contributing authors come visit with us as time permits. And we appreciate you sharing with us tonight. You did great. It's always a pleasure, Karen.
Oh, I was delighted to be here. Thanks so much for inviting me.
All right, pjnet.tv coming to you live from the Eagle's Nest studio. That was Karen Jurgens, and you heard all about the story behind the story of the new book, Love Knots. You've heard about it before. Folks, we will have at the bottom of the hour, as we always do on Monday night, Casper's Take. It is a recorded version, and we've got that all queued up, so I'll be able to enjoy and drink a little coffee instead of working while he's on the air. And we hope you'll stick around for that. Before we tear things down here and rebuild, I would like to ask you to ask yourself two very important questions. First, what is the boldest thing that you've ever done for Jesus Christ? And then secondly, how long ago was that? Folks, we've heard about love knots. We have to act in love, but we have to act in boldness too. I certainly hope that none of us will ever be satisfied with either answer to those two questions.